Howdy, howdy.
As you know, Peyton grew up here.
I did.
Pretty much, and knows just a little bit about everything and then a lot about everything. He's going to talk to us today about taking care of our ponds, keeping them healthy. Why do we get muck? Where does it come from? And then afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session. And also, if any of you are looking for pond renovations or cleaning or would like to discuss ideas, Peyton is really getting into that, and I've seen Geneva's pond and 2 others that Peyton has renovated. It's just, the kids got it going on. So.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Deb. I'll let everybody finish sitting down. I'm gonna save my donuts for after. Huh? Yeah, we'll see. Mid-presentation, I might go back there just because I need one. Looks like most people are hanging out, ready to go. How's everybody doing this morning? Very good. Aside from it being terribly cold and nasty outside. I left all my jackets in the truck last night because I had no idea it was going to be cold this morning. So I walked out, in the t-shirt, and then the jacket's cold. You know how stupid you feel when you do that? Yeah, it was terrible. Well, most of you know me, maybe 50-50, because I recognize about 50% of your faces. You could know me from a million different things. I could have been to your house, or I could have been an 11-year-old running around here getting new water lilies. Could be any and all of that. So the presentation today is on the world of muck. And I can guarantee you can all relate because you all have muck. No matter what you do about it, you all have muck. So first off, who am I? I am that little munchkin. This picture was taken the year we bought this property back in 2013. And I was 11 years old. And from that moment on, it was a full-time gig for me. It wasn't just the weekends. I was here every day through homeschool and learning and selling and working and having the time of my life. And that's the beginning of why I'm able to be here talking to you guys today. And why am I an expert? Well, I guess it depends on your definition of expert, but it's not because of these transformations. It's not because I built that stream, I did this pond, which actually all of these are from members of your club. It's not because of any of that. It is just based on experience and the amount of time I've been doing this. And the amount of people, because I won't credit it to myself, the amount of people that I have had the honor of hanging around. Number one, my father, who I'm sure 100% of you know. And just the general layout of what a pond is, how to maintain a pond, everything came from learning from my dad. And fish health, I had the wonderful opportunity of spending a lot of time with Ray Jordan when he was around. So fish health was learned from the best. And Gordon Chabana for potassium permanganate. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, you're lucky. But my exposure to this industry is where the expertise comes from, if you want to call it expertise. I've been around doing this for 11 years, nonstop, and it has been my career the entire time. So I have a bit of devotion towards it. And so now we have Peyton's Pond Services. Now this is only 3 years old, although I've been doing this for 11 years. I was here for a bunch of years, and then right before we sold this place, I started my own company, which is Peyton's Pond Services. It was started as a way to pay for college, and then developed into a lot more than that when I started getting a lot of return customers. And my plan was elsewhere. I actually had a job lined up in law enforcement, but my plan is not always the best plan, as I think a lot of people know. Our plan is not the best plan, and God had a different path for me. And so through the last 6 months or so, we've decided to take this full time, maintain it, and go. And it's a fantastic thing. It's been wonderful for us. I have zero regrets. And I get to work with this wonderful and terrifying woman every day, which is my wife, Katie, for those of you who do not know, who's sitting right here. Okay, what is muck? Because eventually we need to actually talk about what we're here to talk about. Before I start this, though, I want to throw out there that I'm a college student. I am almost out of college. I've got 3 more months last semester. And so I know exactly what a boring presentation is like. Yeah, I'm an expert. I sit through, 20 hours of boring presentations every single week for the last 4 years. And so I don't want this to be like a college presentation. I want conversation. I want you to raise your hand or yell at me, whatever. I want questions, any and everything during the presentation. Every slide, you don't have to wait till I'm done talking to ask questions. Let's just make this a conversation as opposed to me telling you that I know a little bit about something. So what is muck? And some of you probably sitting here have already noticed that it gets a little unhinged, this list of muck about here, and remains unhinged for the entirety of the rest of the list. And the reason of that is muck can be an infinite number of things. And I've seen an infinite number of things because everything from here to here is something that I've found in somebody's pond while cleaning it. And for those of you in the back, because these letters are kind of small, butter knives, kids' toys, shingle nails, screwdrivers, entire deer bodies, Scrabble pieces, Christmas ornaments, lighters, fake animals, which is not funny because I've found fake snakes, and I've found real snakes too, but the fake ones that are coiled up in like a dangerous position, because they do that when you have like a fake ceramic snake, that's not cool because that's terrifying. Rubber duckies. Anyway, it could be any and everything, and that is just a disgusting picture of what we're talking about today. It's a mixture of fish, leaves, dirt, slime, worms, any and everything. What's going on?
I'm interrupting. The worst thing is half of a rat.
Oh, that's not great. Yeah. That's not great. Rodents are not uncommon. I've pulled a whole raccoon out one time. Actually, I would say that beyond all this crazy stuff, the worst probably was leeches because they were on me, yeah, it wasn't a dead rat, because a dead rat can't bite you. It was a leech, and it did bite me. And these were like the biggest leeches. We're talking like 2.5, 3 inches. I don't know if that's big around the United States, but that's big in Texas. Huh?
Cigarette lighter?
Cigarette lighter. To get them off the
Off?
I haven't heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's super smart. It's faster than magnifying glass, but slower than ripping them off, Any and everything works. All right, so a balance of power. So this is mainly what we're going to circulate back to today in today's presentation. We want a balance of power in the pond. In engineering school, one of the first things in physics class that they hammer into you is equal and opposite forces, a balance of power, the force that an object is providing has to be greater than the force against it for it to make any sort of motion. That's not important, except that it's a great analogy for your pond, because you have 2 powers in your pond. You have your filters, and you have everything that wants to make your filters dirty. And they are fighting, and it's just like a game of tug of war. And what you want, and this is what we'll circulate back to, you want your filters to be able to handle more than the objects fighting your filters. And so what does this picture look exactly like? It looks like that. It is your filters against your trees and your fish and everything else. But this is what we will be focusing on today, is maintaining a balance of power in your pond with large enough oversized filters, what you can do to assist those filters if they're not already big enough, and so on. If you want to maintain any form of respect for me, don't read the quote on the left. But you want to balance, and this is just a very simple bar graph. Your filter needs to be capable of more than all of these other things, and I only put that there because I'm still holding a grudge against the silverware I've found in ponds. But your filter needs to be slightly larger than the things that are causing it to get dirty. Okay, so if I had learned to potty train a koi, I'd not be here today. That's fact. You can't. And so don't hope to. So instead, let's try to combat. Okay, a question. Yeah.
Back up the slide.
I can back up a slide. You gonna change somebody's contact photo to that?
Did you make that?
As AI, but yeah. You know, I wonder what AI thinks about me, the search engine, you know, because I do ask it for things like, you know, create a pond diagram or create a fish on a toilet, you know. I think it's got some varied opinions about me. So this question is slightly depressing. So if you're not prepared for that, get prepared. Koi produces 30% of its body weight in waste anybody know the answer?
3 weeks.
Okay, I heard 3 weeks and day. And the only reason that I put full moon on there is for slight comedic relief for the actual answer, because that is sad.
No.
So this doesn't mean poop, but it does mean poop and pee. It's excretion and water release, right? Every day, 30% of its body weight. So if you imagine a 1,000-gallon pond with 10 koi in there, and koi are all 10 pounds, right? You have 100 pounds of koi. You're producing 30 pounds of waste in your pond every single day. It's an incredible amount. So you have a lot to maintain, though you don't realize it. Fish waste, and so I said this was contributor number 1, because we're going to cover 2 main contributors to the muck in your pond. There's fish, and there's the other one you'll see in a second. Fish waste needs 2 kinds of filtration, and that's another thing we're going to touch on later with solutions. But I want to point out the reasons. So you have particle and biological filtration. We'll talk about this more later, but they're very different. And your pressure filters that are mainly particle will do a little bit of biological. You see things like bioballs, medias, and they're designed to grow bacteria on them. So they are slightly biological, but like 1% of the actual filter's function. So they're very different things. And you need both to take care of fish waste, because number 1, you have ammonia. Ammonia spikes kill fish. They do it all the time. And fish poop is the number 1 generator of your ammonia in your pond. You also have leftovers, which is after the bacteria goes through denitrification and removes the ammonia and the nitrates and everything, you still have a little turd floating in your pond. And it's going to hit the bottom, and it's going to build up, especially with the amount that they crap in a day. So you need both. Spikes kill fish. You remove it with bacteria. We're going to get to that later, or ammonia neutralizers. And the leftovers, which is your biological filter, and your leftovers, those particles need to be caught by a skimmer. They need to go into your filter. That's your particle filtration. That's going to be anything that actually catches stuff. And we are going to go over both of those in a minute. I just wanted to point out that fish waste needs both. Again, AI questioning me. Now, I haven't potty trained trees either, but I can tell you that at least I know they're going to do it at the same place and the same time of year every time, right? This is contributor number 2, and it's discussed a lot whether, and there's very varying opinions whether you should have your pond under a tree. My stance is generally on the side of don't do it, and there's a lot of reasons. But your contributor number 2, it's more than just the leaves. It's the bark, it's the pollens, it's the birds that are sitting on the limbs pooping in your pond. It's any and everything. And we'll talk about why I don't recommend trees. Okay, here's the cons of having your pond under a tree. Get more muck, more filtration needed, more maintenance. You're going to need more of a system. You're going to need a skimmer. Acorns and toxic tannins. Actually, let's take a minute to talk about this. I underlined tannins for a reason. This is something I think the next newsletter is going to come out about. Tannins are a chemical in a leaf of a tree, specifically oaks mostly, but it's kind of spread throughout, but the oaks are the toxic ones. So tannins are a defense mechanism designed and put there to ward off things eating leaves, bugs, birds, whatever.
Don't they turn the water brown also?
They do, yeah. And so they are toxic in high amounts. And you can get high amounts if you have one oak tree over the top of your pond. You'll know when it's getting bad when you have a fall and then your water starts turning brown, because those tannins release a brown liquid into your pond. So it turns tea color, and you know you have a high tannin level. I would recommend water changes. All things you can ask when we get to the question point. But tannins are important to consider when you're putting a pond somewhere. Now, most of you guys probably already have a pond somewhere, but if you don't have a pond yet and you're thinking of building one, I 100% recommend waiting until you find a place with no oak trees or trees, period. And roots jailbreak your liner. There's a couple members of this club that I've done pond fixes for specifically because of roots. Not all roots, but roots are the worst thing you can, what's going on?
On the water change, what percentage of water do you recommend?
Depends on your pond, but if you have one thing that maintains the clarity of the water, it's going to maintain the clean bottom, it's going to maintain healthy water for our fish. So you can promote it naturally. They're living organisms, they need air. So aeration is the #1 way to do it. Now you can do that through an aerator, a little box that pumps bubbles into the bottom of your pond, or you can do it by adding plants, because plants are major aerators in your pond. And the entire purpose here is just to circle back to bacteria, which is actually fixing your pond's problems. You put aeration in there to fix the fixer, right? And so anyway, you can promote it naturally by giving it air. Supplementation. My favorite thing in the world, and we'll talk about this in a second, is micro-lift PL. And that's just because that's the brand I've had exposure to and love. It's something I put in your ponds if I've cleaned it. I put it in your pond afterwards because it's a synthetic bacteria strain that starts the ecosystem for those first 2 weeks or so while your ecosystem is regenerating. It's just an incredibly healthy thing to have. And so you can supplement bacteria into your pond out of a bottle, and it's synthetic, which means man-made. It's going to last for 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so, and it's going to die off, but it gives time for enough natural bacteria to be produced to continue maintaining. Bacteria? So bacteria is not killed by a UV filter because, well, the strains that run through the filter will be, but it's kind of like algae. So string algae that attaches to the side of your pond is not going to be killed by a UV filter because it's never going to pass by the light because it's stuck. Same thing with bacteria. The majority of your bacteria sits on the bottom of your pond and on the walls, and so it's never going to go through. Now the airborne stuff that lost grip of the rocks on the bottom and is floating around, going through there, depends on the strain whether it dies or not by UV. But regardless, it's going to be such a minute amount, it's not going to matter. But if if you're pouring supplemental bacteria in, don't pour it through the UV filter first.
Because some of the instructions on those is turn your UV filter off.
Yeah, and they're just trying to maximize their dosage rate accuracy. They're saying that if you put 5 ounces in, for example, and you can treat 100 gallons with it, which is not a correct dosage, by the way. But anyway, if you put in 5 ounces and treat 100 gallons, but they're assuming that 1/4 of an ounce goes through a UV filter, and if you don't treat the full 100 gallons the first time, it may not do what you're looking to do. They're just trying to fully optimize their dosage rates.
So how often should you put that in your pond? Like just every time you do a backwash or when?
Yeah, so I actually think we don't cover that later in this slide. So I would put bacteria in anytime you do any form of a major water change. So if you do more than 25% of a water change, I would put some bacteria in. Personally, if I ever own my own pond again, right, and that I live in an apartment now, so that's not a possibility, and I see 10 ponds a day anyway, so if I ever own my own pond, I'm going to put bacteria in probably once a month. Just because you have natural cycles of the water, you're going to get turnovers, you're going to get barometric pressure changes, which turns it over, and it's going to cause a lot of that bacteria to be free-floating and die off before it gets back to the food source. You're going to want to probably treat it once a month, if optimally. Just put a little bit in, just to start a cycle.
Can you overdo it?
No, you cannot overdo. You can let your fish swim in bacteria, and they will be happy. As much bacteria as you can possibly put in.
So are you talking about do microlift PL once a month?
That's what I would do.
Okay.
I love microlift PL because it's a specific strain, sort of like a 360. It kind of does a little bit of everything. It does a lot of chemical neutralization, and it does a lot of waste breakdown. So it's a good starter bacteria, meaning like you put it on your filter pads or you dump it in the water after a full water change. Like when I do a cleaning, I remove all the water and the fish and everything, clean your pond, put the fish back in with 100% new tap water generally. That water is not healthy or safe for the fish at the moment. So before I put the fish back in, I put ACCR, get rid of the chlorine, chloramine, heavy metals, everything. And then I put a bunch of bacteria so that for those first 2 weeks, your fish don't really notice that I just removed all the natural bacteria, because this is supplementing it. This is there until the new natural bacteria grows after they start pooping in the new clean water. Did anybody ask a question I didn't cover there? Because I feel like I jumped around.
What's the correct dosage?
Correct dosage is going to depend on the product. Microlift PL, the correct dosage is as much as you can pour in at the time without spending too much money. I think. Well, and Microlift is not super expensive. I think depending on where you get it, it's about $40 for a gallon, which lasts you a really long time. And as long as you keep it inside, it's gonna last. Yeah, 47. So, yeah. Correct dosage, off the top of my head, don't know, because I think Microlift PL states that you should put it on your filter pads, and I don't think they give you a specific dosage. So they actually used to sell it in small squeeze bottles. It's kind of how it was originally sold, to squeeze on your media pads, because those media pads are particle filtration, not biological, and so we're attempting to turn them into biological filtration by also adding a bunch of bacteria strains. Now, does it break down the media really quick? Yes, it does. You will be replacing your media pads twice as often if you put Microlift on there, because the bacteria starts to eat the media pads. But I don't think there is a proper gallon dosage rate for Microlift PL. I think other strains there is, I'm sure, if they're supposed to be waterborne, but I just like putting Microlift PL straight in because it's a good start.
You don't put it on the filter pads?
No, not generally. Generally, right into the water is the purpose I need for it. People put it on their filter pads if their filter pads are getting clogged too quickly, because you get a bunch of leaves and gunk that stops up your filter pads, and then your filter box starts overflowing onto your grass and watering your grass for you. Yeah, exactly. It's a natural water change or an accidental water change. So they put it on their pads to break those leaves down and allow water to flow back through. But generally my purpose for it is to start a pond back up from being 100% clean anyway. So putting it straight in the water is the way to go. Okay, we are going to cover particle versus biological now. And I've already talked a little bit about this. If you have any questions about what is particle versus what is biological, let me know. Technically, everything is both, is the very loose answer, because if you have a pressure filter, it likely has bioballs in it, or it likely has media pads in it. And while its main purpose is to catch all the gunk and the waste and the muck, as we're calling it today, as its point is to catch it, it is also catching bacteria, and it is also growing bacteria. But the amount of bacteria that can grow in your little pressure filter is 1% of what you should have in your pond. So technically pressure filters fall under the particle filtration, as well as a bunch of other types of filters, and then we have filters that are more towards the biological filter, or biological filters are actually generally natural things that you wouldn't buy at a store anyway. But if you have any questions about what's what, let me know. Particle filtration is anything that is flowing dirty water through something and trying to create clean water just by catching the remnants, just by catching the dirt and the gunk and the muck. And particle filters have to be cleaned, which is the worst part of a non-biological filter. You have a maintenance schedule. You know, if you have an Ultima, you have a PondMax or PondMax pressure filter, those are amazing filters, and I would always recommend them in a situation where you can't put in a biological filter, but you have a maintenance schedule. And so people who want a maintenance-free pond generally should go more the route of biological. You have pressure filters, box or flow through, which catches anything like weirs. So waterfall weirs, skimmer boxes, or waterfall boxes they call them, with a bunch of Metallo media pads, blue, green, gray, black. A lot of people have those. They were the hype, 5-10 years ago, and they were great. But they are particle filters, and so you have to take those pads out and physically clean them. So this diagram is just showing you them filtering water through. It looks like pebbles and coal and dirt and sand, and that's kind of the concept. You'll see these medias. If you have a particle filter, you'll see these medias. Ribbon media, which is actually sharp, be careful. I've cut myself many times. It's just a giant ball of ribbon. Bioballs, they're the little plastic balls that are designed to build bacteria. Filter pads, lava rock. I don't recommend lava rock. It doesn't have enough large holes in it. It gets clogged easily. Okay, biological filtration is pretty much natural stuff. It's plants, it's bacterial supplementation, water filter, aerators, aquaponic systems. So if you see water in nature, if you're on a hike and you come upon a stream and it's beautifully clear, they don't have a pressure filter hiding behind a tree somewhere. It's beautifully clear because it goes through an incredible amount of biological filtration, and that's due to, that's just due to natural design. The plant seeks water, and then the plant removes, the chemicals, it removes the particles into its root, and it eats that, and it grows beautiful, and your stream is clean. And so anything natural is going to be considered biological filtration. Plants are a fantastic way to filter your pond, although if you have a stagnant water pond somewhere with maybe just a pump flowing, you have to put so many plants in there to actually do the job if they're just in a pot that it's probably not the way to go. You could put 100 plants in if you want, but your fish might not be able to swim around anymore. Bacterial supplementation, we talked about that. That is biological filtration because we're starting at the smallest of the food chain here and actually building that ecosystem from the ground up. So that's biological filtration. Bog filter, that's one we'll talk about in a minute. Bog filter, I will have a bog filter on that theoretical pond I've talked about. My pond in the future has to have a bog filter. I am so on the side of bog filters, such a bog filter supporter, that I will try to filter my entire pond with that because it does both. It's under the biological filtration, but it really falls under particle and biological because you're pushing that water through 18 inches of gravel. That's your particle filtration, right? And so it is catching stuff, but that's not its purpose. The gravel is there to house the roots of all the plants, whether you're growing a garden or you're just putting bog plants in there to be pretty, to flower. The gravel is there to house the roots because that's a great substrate for them that are eating all the gunk and promoting the bacteria and doing all the actual filtration. So bog filter is the number one.
So how hard is it to add a bog filter to an existing?
Not that hard. That's one of the wonderful things. A bog filter can be added pretty easily because a bog filter is a separate container or body of water.
I'm a plant person, so
yeah.
I want those plants.
Well, and we've done a couple consultations recently for people who want to add a bog to a pond who doesn't have one because they have a lot of particle filtration, no biological filtration, their water's not necessarily clear, and they also want to grow cool crops like lettuce and tomatoes, which you can do an entire aquaponics system out of your pond bog. You don't have to have an aquaponics setup, And so they're growing their herbs, and it is, yeah, it's growing their herbs, it's growing their dinner food. So yeah, it can be added and should be added to any pond that doesn't have one, but above the ground is how it's built, so it can be added. It has to be at a higher level than your pond so that it flows water back into the pond. Because it's not pressurized, it cannot be below the level of the pond. There's no way to get the water back. It is an open top water feature and therefore has to be higher, so you build it above ground. A lot of times they are like 4x4 planks built, and actually the water lily tanks out here. If anybody's ever walked around there, you've seen the water lily tanks. Those are 4x4 planks built into a square. It could be a small rectangle, it can be whatever, but it looks nice. You can stain that wood, you can hide the liner,
and make it bigger too, right?
You can make it as big as you want. It's modular. So yes, yeah, they're additions you can add on. Aerators, again, we're feeding bacteria. So put an aerator in your pond. It doesn't matter how much aeration your waterfall is producing. Realistically, your waterfall produces minimal. I mean, the actual splash of the water is only that top inch or so of aeration because the water levels are sectioned. And so if you splash bubbles an inch deep, you're only aerating that top inch of water. But you do get some aeration by it flowing over the rocks. That is, you're passing water through fresh air consistently. And they say, I think if you pass it over 8 feet of fresh air, it's fully oxygenated again. But an 8-foot waterfall is kind of a lot. Anyway, if you have any system without an actual aerator, I would add one, or plants. And then an aquaponics system you've probably seen. The fish poop feeds the plants make the water clear. Yeah?
Go back to the aerators. I always thought they were for the fish.
Well, in a scope, they're absolutely for the fish. Everything is for the fish. Everything we're talking about today is for the fish because the reason I recommend consistent cleanings is because the leaves that are built on the bottom of your pond due to a lack of bacteria, aeration, and these things. They build gases and they build carbon monoxide down there. And so if a fish swishes their tail and kicks up a bunch of those gases, you could have them all belly up in a day. So, and it's not uncommon. When I get in there to clean a lot of ponds, the first thing I do is take the fish out. I don't start doing, you know, some of the cleaning first, because if I release those gases, they'll be dead by the time I get them out. So the stuff that builds on the bottom of the pond, the muck, the stuff we're trying to remove through aeration and bacteria, will kill your fish. So this is all really for the healthier fish. So aeration, it is good for the fish too, because, you know, fish like oxygenated water. They're healthier that way. They grow better that way. But that's a whole other topic of fish health. Today's discussion, we are absolutely helping the fish through healthy water. So yes, it is absolutely for that. Yeah.
Okay, you said when the waterfall comes,
Yeah.
whatever level you have, that's so much oxygen, and it's only on top.
Yeah.
Right? What would be the solution to get that oxygen down at the bottom of the tank?
So aerators, boxes that push air through tubes and into air stones, and they bubble up from the bottom. Just like an aquarium, you got the little bubblers.
Right.
That's what an aerator is. Anything from a small box to a big multi-horsepower engine, depending on the size of pond, and you're just pushing it straight down. Actually, your aerator is sized based on how deep your pond is too. Anything 6 feet or shallower, you can do a small, I don't remember what they say, less than 1.5 horsepower. But if you do anything deeper than that, because pushing it down is so hard, you have to have a bigger one.
So just sucking the water out of the tank and again to going up to your water tank where it comes out, water, that's not sufficient then?
It's not sufficient unless you are fully oxygenating that water before it hits the basin again. And so what they say is if your water's flattened, because surface area is important, if your water is flat, running over sheets of rock, and it travels 8 feet of distance, they say your water is fully oxygenated again. But that's probably for bacteria. If I were to guess, that's not that much oxygenation, in my opinion. That probably is enough to keep your bacteria alive, promote bacteria, but probably not more supplemental for fish health. So pushing water into the bottom is always recommended, or adding plants. And the only way to filter a big pond, we're talking like an acre pond, is through aeration. When I used to work here, one of my main jobs was building the large PVC aerators for stock ponds. Because the only way to filter that, you can't put 45 pressure filters on it, you know? Number one, you can't afford the stock pond then because you just spent $1 million on filters. You can't filter a big pond through anything but aeration, whether that's through a bunch of plants like hydrilla or an Acarus cavamba, or pumping several hundred liters per hour of water or of air into the middle of that pond. And so that's what we did for those, and that would clear them up like a pretty lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question. On the air stones, do you have to have them throughout the bottom of the pond, or just having them on one side is significant or sufficient to get the oxygen level then throughout?
So I recommend putting them on the opposite side of your skimmer in your pond, because your pump is drawing water, and whether you can see it or not, your pond constantly has a current, it has a circulation. Everything from one side of the pond is getting sucked to the side of the pond that your pump is on. And so regardless, once an hour, which is what is recommended, once an hour, your entire pond is being pushed through that pump and back out to your waterfall or just back into the pond. So if you put your aerator on the opposite side, that newly oxygenated water will be flushed through constantly. So if you only have one stone, put it across from your pump. Otherwise, put it in everywhere you want, but you only need one. Not important to spread it throughout the surface area of the water. Now, if your pond is 40 feet long, that's a different thing, because now we're talking about a pump that is not necessarily pushing the pond once per hour. It's just pushing enough for a waterfall. And in that case, if it's that big anyway, I would do multiple stones to aerate sections. But since your water's circulating, it's all getting aerated if you have one stone on the opposite side of the pond. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. So this is 99% of people. This is not a bad place. It's not actually 99% of people. Maybe 99% of people here. This is not a bad place because actually 90% of people don't have a filter at all. So you're already ahead of the game, having a filter, right? And you may have clear water as well, but today is not just about removing the muck on the bottom. Today is a lot about promoting the health of your pond, right? And so if you just have a particle filter, that's great, and your water may be clear and your fish may be healthy because they have enough bacteria, they have clear water, you know, so they're getting plenty of UV. But if you want to take it to the next level, the health of your pond to the next level, you want to promote biological filtration. So plants, this is a general rule if it's an addition, but realistically, if you have 1,000 gallons and you want to add, just add as many as you can. I mean, add as many as you can without making the fish try and move around in a bathtub. You know what I mean? Just put as many as you can in there. 5 plants per 1,000 gallon is a rough estimate based on the amount of oxygen that a plant produces and the amount of waste that a plant intakes. So just put plants in. Again, supplement bacteria. I'm going to hound on that every time I can today because it is the #1 important thing. Stay on top of skimming because you're going to have leaves that can't go through your particle filters. Ultima filters, Pond Masters, they're not built to take in a maple leaf, you know what I mean, and catch it, and that maple leaf's not going to break down until it's clogged your filter. So skimming either with a net or having a skimmer and emptying the basket is super important if you don't have any biological filtration that's going to produce bacteria that's going to eat those leaves before they go through your filter system. And regulate your fish load. This is the last newsletter we released, and some of you may have noticed if you have the newsletter that we didn't release one last Saturday, my apologies. But the last one, 2 Saturdays ago, was regulate your fish load. It was telling you how to calculate the amount of fish that you should have in your pond realistically to keep everything healthy, to keep them growing at a proper rate. And so here's your rules for that. Actually, no, here's a picture that you should not. Your pond should not look like that. Again, AI, so if any of these fish have too many fins, it's not my fault. AI generates koi with like 15 fins all the time. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, your pond shouldn't look like that. I've seen ponds that look like that. When I was 13 here, we went to Dallas to get a lady's fish because she was filling in her pond. And we pulled out 150 fish out of a, I would say it was probably around 8,000 gallon pond. And it looked like that or worse. And we were all in there in waders just grabbing them because they were just everywhere. It's terrible. Don't let it look like that. And if it does, I relocate fish to other customers who want them. So
Was she filling it in because she couldn't keep it clean?
yeah, no surprise. But well, and she was also filling it. I think her husband had just passed, and she didn't want to maintain it, which I understand. If I had 150 koi in that amount of pond, I'd move states. Okay, rules of fin engagement. I actually asked my wife if I could use this pun last night because I'm not a pun creator and she is, and I needed to know if this was acceptable. Does everybody get it? Am I? Yep. Okay, cool. Rules of fin engagement. 1 full-size 30-inch koi per 250 gallons. Do not put 1 koi in a 250-gallon tank. That's like putting a fish in a barrel, which is terrible. That'd be like me in a bathtub trying to live my life, right? So minimum of 800 to 1,000 gallons. That's not actually that massive of a pond. The pond, the first pond on the right when you walk in, used to be 1,000 gallons. Now it's like 2,000 gallons. And that's, you know, it's not massive. A 10 by 10 by 2 or 2 or 2.5 feet is a 1,000 gallon pond. So just don't put any koi below 800 to 1,000 because they're not going to have enough room to swim around. These are all covered in that newsletter too. Female koi are larger than male koi. This is something that beginners shouldn't necessarily like really focus on. We're not gonna worry about exact inches here. But they are larger, and so if you're factoring to an exact calculation, factor that in. There's a rule in the aquarium industry, 1 inch per 1,000 gallons, which is really just that's like the baseline. Now that changes when you get more into depth, but you can't do that with the pond. That rule does not move over because you're gonna have 30 koi in a 1,000 gallon pond, you know, and that's not gonna be acceptable, or however many koi it is. It's not good. So these are the base rules. Koi grow. I'll cover this on the next slide, and I'm not. 11-year-old me might have thought this was like some impressive. No, koi grow though at incredible rates. So I'll cover this on the next slide. But you can't put 4 baby koi in a 1,000-gallon pond, think it looks empty, and then go put 20 more, because that's the correct amount of fish inches you should have, unless you're willing to get rid of those 20 in 3 years. I think I covered that here. That's the size and weight comparison. 13-inch koi, this one, weighs 1 pound. And a 30-inch koi, this one, weighs 12 pounds. 12 to 15 pounds. So in size, they look like this, but in weight, they look like that. So the amount of mass that the koi puts on between 13 and 30 inches, it's just double the size and 12 times the weight. The amount of mass is incredible. So putting a bunch of small baby koi in your pond and it looks empty doesn't mean you can go add them, because in 3 years, they're going to be this and equivalent to the health of your pond. So you want to minimize in the beginning. And it may take a little while for those 4 baby koi to fill out your pond and look right. But it's going to be worth it. Just, I promise you, from a maintenance level, it's going to be worth it. Yeah.
You know, I have seen some videos of the Japanese koi, and they grow very big.
Yeah.
And they have them in the mud ponds.
Yeah.
No filtration.
Yep.
What kind of food do they feed the fish that they grow here?
What kind of food? Yeah, very high protein food in the right time of year. That water temperature is generally regulated. It is a mud pond, but it's still somewhat regulated because of the amount of gallons we're talking about. And so they can feed them protein food for longer throughout the year. But at the same time, they then switch to, so they do a high wheat germ and high protein food in the summer, and then they switch to either not feeding them or bringing them inside or covering the tanks with heaters. Most of the big Japanese farmers keep that water at a pretty consistent level year round. And if they need to not feed them, or they need to feed them a winter food, which is just a lower protein food, then they will. But their ponds look like this. You're absolutely right. And they still grow massive and beautiful and healthy. The reason for that is that the majority of these ponds are connected. You know, these farms have 100 of these ponds that are quarter-acre ponds. And so some of them are stocked, some of them aren't stocked. Most of the time what they do is take fish and move them between pond to pond. And so what you're actually talking about here is 1 million gallons of water, but your fish that look like this are trapped in an area that's more like, you know, 20,000 gallons or 30,000 gallons. But it's okay, and I'm actually covering that on the next slide, because the 1 million gallons that's all connected, it equates to having a 1 million gallon pond that those fish are in for the water health. Now they're still bumping into each other, but the water is healthy as if it were a 1 million gallon pond, because all that water is circulating and connected. So the farms that look like this, they never have all of those tanks full, and they still are calculating how many fish they should have. Oh my gosh, this one's double-headed.
That's an overcrowded
So,
right here.
aren't those big Japan fish farms, aren't they using like flow through, like constant? So they're
Generally using well water too.
Fresh water.
Or lake water,
Yeah.
or something along those lines.
So it's not like just a static.
Exactly.
Like, so even connected together 1 million gallons, it's 1 million gallons, but also getting a swimming pool.
Being
water.
supplemented with new water all the time. That's exactly what this slide, not that slide, this slide is about. This is a pond we worked on recently. I wish I had a picture without the shovels and stuff. But this is a pond we worked on recently from an aerial view. That's Dunlop. So that is the lake. And the water is being circulated back to this pond. This pond's actually spring fed, and this pond is lake fed. And they're connected, but regardless, you are getting a constant inflow of perfectly temperature, perfectly healthy water. You would essentially have infinitesimal gallons, because you are connected to the entire world of water source, right? So this water, he could have as many fish in here as he wants before they start bumping into each other, and it would be healthy, because this water is perfectly healthy all the time. That's what this is about. An additional water volume will increase the number of fish you can have. This also equates, if you have a small pond and you want to put more fish in it, or you want to quarantine, or you want to grow baby fish, whatever you want to do, if you want to add a pop-up tank and just circulate the water between the two, you've just added that 600 gallons to your pond. It doesn't all have to be the same body of water to to increase the gallonage of your pond, because we're increasing the health of your pond as opposed to increasing the size of what the fish swim in. And I think, okay, so find your balance. We're circulating back to the balance thing. If I have that theoretical pond in the future, this is what I will do. I will have an oversized particle and biological filtration. I'll likely run a Ultima filter connected to a massive bog. And the bog, so size-wise for a bog, if you want to filter the entire pond with a bog, it needs to be 30% of the surface area of your pond. That's like the rule. I'm going to make it 50% and add a particle filter, because I don't believe a pond can have enough filtration. Because filtration is not, it's not sucking your bacteria in and killing it. It's not ridding the pond of the natural chemicals it needs, because it's just flow through. And you cannot have enough filtration. So I will have an oversized particle and biological filtration. I will not be putting it under trees. I don't want to clean my own pond. I will, at that point, have done that for many, many years, and I don't want to do it to mine. Now, I may still clean my pond. Actually, I think I have down here regular cleanings. I will still clean my pond. That was a joke. But I will still not put it under trees so that my cleaning is easier. Regulated number of koi. That's a big one. Because no matter how much filtration you put, if you put too many fish, you will have a problem. 30% of their body weight every day. Supplementation bacteria, again, I'm probably going to put that in once a month. It's good that y'all have asked these questions because I mostly covered this while we've been talking. I will have plenty of variation. I probably will add an actual aerator box to my pond as opposed to just using plants, although they will do enough.
So what year is this pond going to be built?
Good question. 10 plus.
10?
Well, in this housing market, you know.
Yeah.
Someday when I have my own house and it is my stay-at-home house, because I don't want to build this massive pond and then give it to the next person, because building a pond never values out in a home sale. When I have my final house, I will have a nice pond. I will spend the extra and go the extra mile to make it as maintenance-free as possible, which I do believe ponds can be. They can be maintenance-free if you want to maintain them, because I think it's somewhat of a enjoyable thing for some people if you want to maintain them. There's plenty of things you can still do, but I will try to build the maintenance-free pond and go the extra mile to make it all of these things.
Then she can retire.
Exactly. Exactly.
And Peyton, and we do expect, once that's done, for us to have one of our fish and plant swaps held in your backyard.
Come on over. Come on over. I'm sure we'll still know each other pretty well. You can show up. Okay, and at the end of this, I just covered some of the things we do that could help you if you're looking to start your balancing. This is a pond clean. It had 47 fish in 1,000 gallons. That was a lot. Recently, most of those have been removed, so it's a much healthier pond now. This was a cleaning done recently. This is your pond. This is a cleaning done recently here. We do these cleanings once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, often. Summer comes around 6 times, 7 times a week. A pond cleaning is pretty common because it should be necessary. You should probably clean your pond or have your pond cleaned. And I'm not trying to advertise, but I will have my pond cleaned probably once a year, because the leaf buildup is inevitable. You can put as much bacteria as you want in there. You're still going to have these shells of leaves that build up down there. And so you are going to build carbon dioxide down there, and you are going to have potential fish issues. You're going to have tannins. You can water change, but you're not going to fully remove them, right? You can supplement with as much bacteria as you want. There's still things that we recommend cleaning out. And a lot of people don't have ponds that are kept up with all of this at the moment anyway, and a cleaning helps because it starts fresh. You start with fresh water to be able to then install what you need if you need something extra. You know, we install any and everything if you need to supplement your pond with something. Between biological filtration, we build bogs. Anybody builds bogs. You can build a bog. I can teach you how to build a bog. Pumps, filters, bogs, cleaning a pond, and then installing what you need to start fresh with essentially it's a clean wipe. And then you get to go from there the way you want. And maintain cleaning schedule yearly, recommended extended time between cleanings. So this is the other thing. Some people, myself included, don't want to see me every year, right? I wouldn't. So there's things that you can do to extend the time between cleanings just by your personal maintenance. Empty your skimmers as often as you can. Backwash the filters. If it's an Ultima, I tell people do it every 2 weeks. If it's another filter, anywhere between 2 weeks and a month, just to be ahead of it. You know, even if the water comes out clear, still do it. Add bacteria. And any and everything else we talked about today. So all those last 3 slides was to just throw out there that if you need any help, I'm here. So let me know. I think that's it. Now, I would really appreciate if you guys would scan this and let us know how we did. It's just a, do I need to go back to school, learn how to present, or yes, it was a reasonable presentation. I left a lot of time at the end for talking.
Yes.
Y'all did great talking throughout. I can't stand the classes that are like, wait till I finish the presentation. And I'm like, but I won't remember. You know? Yeah, I know. I gotta go back and do that, what is that, Monday? 2 days from now. Anyway, so y'all did a great job talking throughout, but